The operating chamber. Mira woke, strapped to a cold metal table in a sterile white room. Collector scientists moved around her, their insect faces showing no emotion. She tried to struggle, but her body would not respond. The paralysis field held her completely still. "Specimen is conscious," one collector observed. "This is acceptable. Awareness does not affect organ quality." Harvester Prime approached the table. Its compound eyes reflected Mira's terrified face 1,000 times. "Your species is dying, young human, but your unique traits will live forever in our collection. You should feel honored." Through her special vision, Mira could see the energy patterns around the collectors. They felt cold and empty, like machines pretending to be alive. She reached out with her consciousness, trying to find anything that resembled mercy or compassion. There was nothing. The surgical instruments began to move. Mira felt the first incision near her left eye and screamed silently inside her paralyzed body. The pain was beyond anything she had ever experienced. The connection, what the collectors did not know, was that Mira's eyes were not just biological organs. They were connected to something far older and more powerful than human science could explain. Deep beneath Sanctuary Station, in levels that had been sealed and forgotten for centuries, an entity stirred. The station had not been built by humans. It was discovered drifting in space, ancient and abandoned. Humans had simply moved into an artifact left by a civilization that vanished long ago. In the deepest chamber, beneath layers of strange metal and crystalline structures, the Sentinel opened its eyes for the first time in 5,000 years. The creature was massive, its body made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. It looked like a dragon from Earth's old myths, but it was something far stranger. The Sentinel was a guardian left behind by the architects, an ancient race that had seeded the galaxy with protectors for developing civilizations. The Sentinel felt Mira's pain through our shared connection. Every being with true sight was linked to these ancient guardians. The bond activated automatically when such individuals faced mortal danger. The awakening. The second eye surgery began. Mira's consciousness started to fade as the trauma overwhelmed her. But just before she lost awareness completely, she felt something respond to her suffering. A roar shook Sanctuary Station so violently that everyone thought the structure would tear apart. In the operating chamber, the collectors paused their work as their ship's systems began to fail. "Unknown energy surge detected," a technician reported. "Origin point, the human station." Harvester Prime checked the readings with growing concern. "Impossible. Humans possess no technology capable of generating such power." The roar came again, louder this time. It was not a sound heard by ears alone. It resonated through dimensions the collectors barely understood, carrying rage that had been building for millennia. Captain Marcus Webb stood in the station's command center, staring at the readings in disbelief. Something was emerging from the sealed lower levels. Something huge. The Sentinel rises. The ancient doors that had been locked for centuries exploded outward. The Sentinel rose through level after level, its crystalline body glowing with power that made the station's lights flicker and die. The creature was beautiful and terrible. Its scales were made of living diamond that refracted light into impossible colors. Its wings seemed to fold through multiple dimensions at once, and its eyes burned with the same quantum sight that Mira possessed. Every human on the station felt the Sentinel's presence in their minds. Not words, but pure emotion, protective fury directed at those who had dared to harm one of the true sight bearers. The dragon burst through the station's outer hull as if it were paper. Air rushed out briefly before emergency shields activated, but the Sentinel was already in space, tracking the collector ship through the quantum connections it could perceive. Marcus watched through the command center windows as the crystalline dragon disappeared into the darkness, pursuing the collectors. He had no idea what the creature was, but he understood what it was doing. "That thing is going after Mira," he said. "Prepare the remaining fighters. We follow it." "Sir, we only have 3 functional ships," his second-in-command protested. "We cannot fight an entire collector fleet." Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "We are not going to fight a fleet. We are going to rescue a girl. And if that crystal dragon needs help tearing apart the aliens who took her, then by God we will help it." In the cold operating chamber, the collectors watched their sensors in growing panic as something ancient and unstoppably drew closer with every passing second. Mira's stolen eyes sat in preservation chambers, still alive, still seeing. And through them, her consciousness remained aware, guiding the sentinel toward her location. The collectors had made a terrible mistake. They had stolen from someone under ancient protection. And now that protection was coming to collect its own price. Part 2, The Reckoning. The pursuit. The sentinel moved through space like a living comet, its crystalline body leaving trails of quantum energy in its wake. The creature did not need engines or fuel. It traveled by folding the fabric of reality itself, stepping through dimensions that organic minds could barely comprehend. Inside the collector ship, Harvester Prime watched the tracking displays with growing alarm. "The entity is maintaining pursuit despite our dimensional shifts. How is this possible?" "Unknown, Prime," the navigator replied. "It moves through spacetime as if the laws of physics do not apply to it." The truth was simpler than the collectors realized. The Sentinel was not tracking their ship at all. It was following the quantum connection between Mira's consciousness and her stolen eyes. No amount of distance or dimensional barriers could break that bond. "Increase speed to maximum," Harvester Prime ordered. "We must reach the high world before the entity catches us. The collective will know how to deal with this threat." Behind them, 3 small human fighters struggled to keep pace with the Sentinel. Captain Marcus piloted the lead ship, pushing his engines beyond safe limits. He could see the dragon ahead, glowing against the darkness like a fallen star seeking vengeance. Mira's vision. In the operating chamber, Mira's body lay still on the surgical table. The collectors had finished extracting both eyes and placed her in a healing pod to keep her alive for potential future harvesting. But Mira's consciousness was far from dormant. Through her connection with the Sentinel, she could see everything the dragon saw. She experienced flight through dimensions, felt the ancient power flowing through crystalline veins, understood the purpose for which the architect had created these guardians thousands of years ago. The Sentinel was a living weapon designed to protect developing civilizations from predators. For millennia, it had slept in the abandoned station, waiting for a signal that never came. The original civilization it was meant to protect had vanished long before humans discovered the structure. But when Mira developed her quantum sight, she became linked to the Guardian's purpose. Her gift marked her as worthy of protection. And when the collectors violated that protection, they awakened something that had no mercy for those who preyed upon the innocent. Mira felt the dragon's thoughts merge with her own. She was no longer just a human girl. She was the Sentinel's focus, its reason for waking, its chosen herald. The Hive World. The collector ship dropped out of hyperspace near a massive planet covered in geometric structures that stretched from pole to pole. This was the Hive World, home to the collective's central intelligence and repository for their stolen genetic library. Billions of collectors lived here, organized into a perfect hierarchy controlled by the Overmind. They had built their civilization on the principle that all valuable traits belonged to them. They were the universe's librarians, preserving uniqueness by collecting it, even if collection meant extinction for those they harvested from. "We have arrived," Harvester Prime transmitted. "The aberrant entity continues pursuit. Request immediate defensive activation." The Overmind's response boomed through every collector consciousness on the planet. "Acknowledged. All defensive systems online. The entity will be captured and added to our collection." Thousands of weapon platforms activated across the Hive World. The collectors had defended their home from numerous threats over the centuries. They were confident in their ability to handle one creature, no matter how unusual. They were wrong. The battle. The Sentinel emerged from hyperspace directly above the Hive World. The dragon's roar echoed across every frequency, from radio waves to quantum resonance. Every collector on the planet felt the sound in their genetic memory, triggering ancient fears they did not know they possessed. The weapon platforms opened fire immediately. Energy beams that could vaporize moons, struck the Sentinel's crystalline body, and simply refracted away harmlessly. Missiles designed to crack planets exploded against its scales without leaving a mark. The dragon descended through the atmosphere like divine judgment made manifest. Its wings spread wide enough to cast shadows over entire continents. The quantum energy radiating from its body disrupted collector technology, causing systems to fail and computations to collapse into chaos. Captain Marcus and his fighters followed the Sentinel down. "Target the ship that took Mira," he ordered. "It is landing near that large pyramidal structure. That's where they'll have her." The Overmind's mistake. In the central chamber of the greatest structure on the Hive world, the Overmind prepared its ultimate weapon. The collective consciousness had existed for over 10,000 years, accumulating knowledge and power from 1,000 extinct civilizations. The Overmind believed it could overwhelm the Sentinel with pure psychic force. It had dominated the minds of countless species before. This creature would be no different. The Overmind reached out with its consciousness, attempting to crush the Sentinel's will and subsume it into the collective. It encountered Mira's consciousness instead. The girl's mind was small compared to the Overmind's vast intelligence, that it was connected to something the collectors had never experienced: genuine compassion, protective love, and righteous fury. Through Mira, the Overmind felt every species the collectors had driven to extinction. Every child stolen from grieving parents. Every civilization reduced to genetic samples in cold storage. Every act of violation committed in the name of preservation. The Overmind screamed. The Herald awakens. In the healing pod, Mira's eyes opened. Not the eyes that had been stolen, but new eyes formed from pure crystalline energy. They glowed with the same light that burned in the Sentinel's heart. She sat up, and the healing pod shattered around her. Collector guards rushed forward, but stopped when they saw her eyes. Those eyes could see everything. Past, present, future, all quantum possibilities, spreading out in infinite directions. "You took what was not yours," Mira said. Her voice carried harmonics that made the walls vibrate. "You ended what should have continued. You preserved death while calling it life." She raised her hand, and quantum energy flowed from her fingers. The collectors who had operated on her found themselves frozen in place, forced to experience every moment of pain they had inflicted on their victims over the centuries. "I am the Herald," Mira continued. "I speak for those who can no longer speak. I carry the memory of the lost, and I bring judgment. The reckoning." The Sentinel landed in the Hive World's central plaza, its massive claws cracking the artificial ground. The dragon's wings spread wide, and quantum energy poured from its body like rain made of light. Every genetic sample the collectors had ever taken began to glow. The stolen DNA of extinct species responded to the Sentinel's call. They were not just dead tissue anymore. They were memories given form. Across the Hive world, ghosts of extinct civilizations appeared. The Varathi, whose cities had sung with bioluminescent beauty. The Krenth, whose mathematics had touched the edge of cosmic truth. The Solari, whose poetry could make stars weep. Species after species manifested as energy constructs, surrounding the collectors he had ended them. There would be no violence. The Sentinel did not need violence. It simply made the collectors understand. Every collector on the planet simultaneously experienced what their victims had felt. The terror of extinction. The grief of being the lost of your kind. The despair of knowing your civilization would leave no legacy except stolen genes in a jar. The Overmind collapsed under the weight of collective guilt. The Hive world systems began to shut down. As the central intelligence fragmented into billions of individual consciousnesses, each one forced to confront its own complicity. The restoration. Mira walked through the chaos to find her stolen eyes. They sat in preservation chambers in Harvester Prime's laboratory, still alive, still connected to her. But she did not reclaim them. The crystalline eyes the Sentinel had given her were far superior. With them, she could see things her human eyes never could. Instead, she took her original eyes and placed them in a monument the Sentinel created in the center of the Hive world. A crystalline tower that would serve as a memorial to all the collectors had taken. "Let these eyes bear witness," Mira said. "Let them remind any who come after what happens when preservation becomes predation." Captain Marcus found her standing before the tower. He had aged 10 years in the past few hours, his face lined with exhaustion and wonder. Mira, he said quietly, is that still you? She turned to him, her crystalline eyes reflecting his image in patterns of light. It is me, Marcus, but I am also more now. I am humanity's voice in a conversation we did not know was happening. A new beginning. The Sentinel's work was not done with the hive world. Using quantum energy, it began to restore what the collectors had destroyed. DNA samples were returned to their homeworlds. Some species had surviving populations that could be strengthened with their ancestors' genetics. Others had lost their worlds entirely and needed new homes. The Sentinel could provide those homes. The dragon's power allowed it to reshape barren worlds into living paradises. Each restored civilization would be given a chance to begin again, protected by newly awakened guardians across the galaxy. For humanity, the Sentinel has special plans. The 847 survivors on Sanctuary Station were not the end of their species, but the seed of something greater. Mira became the first herald, teaching humans to see the quantum connections that bound all lights together. Others like her began to manifest the gift, their eyes changing as they connected with ancient protectors across the stars. Marcus and the surviving humans helped coordinate the restoration efforts, using their skills to rebuild civilizations that had been ended by collector harvesting. Epilogue: The New Age. 10 years later, Mira stood on a world that had not existed before. The Sentinel had created it from a lifeless rock, transforming it into a paradise where extinct species could live again. Humans had named it Genesis, and it had become the center of the new galactic community. Representatives from 1,000 civilizations gathered here to learn from each other and from the heralds who could see the connections between all things. The crystalline dragon that had saved her rested on a mountain overlooking the capital city. It no longer slept, but it did not need to hunt either. The age of predators was ending. The age of protectors had begun. Mira often visited the Sentinel to share what she had learned, and to thank it for the gift of sight it had restored in a form more powerful than what was stolen. You gave me back more than my eyes, she said to the dragon. You gave humanity hope. The Sentinel's response filled her mind with warmth and ancient wisdom. You gave me purpose, young herald. For thousands of years, I waited, wondering if I would ever fulfill the task for which I was created. You awakened me, and through that awakening, countless lives have been saved. Mira looked out over Genesis, seeing not just the physical world, but the quantum patterns that connected every living thing. She saw the threads of possibility stretching into futures, where extinction was no longer inevitable, where the strong protected rather than consumed the weak. The collectors had tried to take her eyes, thinking they were claiming the last valuable trait of a dying species. Instead, they had awakened something that would ensure no species ever faced such theft again. In the end, the last human girl had become the first herald, and her stolen sight had become the light that guided the galaxy toward a better future. The end.